Do you want to learn how you can build your personal brand and make selling easier, not from some guru who's sat on the high horse who's written books about personal branding for years, but from someone who's gone from 0 to 3 years in having an incredible personal brand in the sales space? Then this episode is for you. Hello, Sales Nation, and welcome to today's episode of the Salesman podcast. On today's show, we have James Buckley. He is the Director of Business Development over at SiriusInsight.com. He is a real, genuine sales practitioner. He has SDRs working with him. He is closing new business regularly. And on today's episode, he's sharing how he's gone from 0 to his own personal brand in 3 years and how that helps him get conversations with decision makers easier. Everything we talk about is available in the show notes of this episode over at salesmanpodcast.com. And with all that said, let's jump straight in. James, welcome to the Salesman Podcast.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, Will. This is really exciting. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Good. I'm glad to have you on. I just want to point this out to the audience. James kind of hustled and put some audio gear together when perhaps it was going the extra mile. So I appreciate that, mate. I appreciate you making the extra effort for the show. And that's always worth pointing out to the audience. And hopefully that's just a prelude to the value that you're going to give on the episode as well. We're going to talk about personal branding. We're going to talk about it not from the expert of some personal branding guru or expert or someone who's done it for 40 years, has built a company and is living off the kind of remnants of their personal brand in the past. We're going to talk about personal brand from a real sales practitioner and yourself. So I'll tee it up here. Perhaps we can split the conversation into two parts because there's lots of SDRs that listen and I don't give them enough love and attention as what I should do. And then we'll come on to business development guys, account managers, entrepreneurs, and everyone else on the other side of the table. So if one of your SDRs comes up to you, James, he or she, big grin on the face, they want to build their own personal brand. What's your initial response or reaction to that?
Well, so I'm a man of many questions. I ask a lot of questions about what people are doing to present that personal brand to the world. One of the first questions I always ask is, what kind of content do you put out? And do you put it out frequently enough? I find that consistency with content is king when you're building a personal brand. You want that brand to represent you personally. So it's always important for them to know who they are, know what they're shooting for, have solid, attainable goals in place, and then be consistent with delivery. If you're going to say, I want to do a sales tip of the day, every day you better have that sales tip ready to go. So do a backlog and have 20 or 30 ready to go and cover that month. Or if you're going to do video, then you need to have that weekly time set aside to create that video. Make sure you're sharing that video out weekly. So don't just be, willy-nilly with what you're going to put out there. You need to be consistent with all the content that represents your brand.
I'm going to ask you this. You've already answered the question. We're going to ask you again just to clarify, because this splits a lot of the guests that come on the show. Should salespeople, bearing in mind we're having a conversation about building personal brand, should salespeople be creating their own content?
Absolutely, 100%. I think if you're not creating content and you're a sales rep and you're sitting back wondering why you can't reach your goal every month, that's the reason why. It's the reason why, because you can't say, I don't have enough to do sales-wise. I don't have enough sales to make. I don't have enough trials. I don't have enough demos, whatever it is that you're trying to get. If you're saying I don't have enough of that, then what are you doing as a sales rep to get that? So yeah, I think they should be curating, creating, writing. Creative writing is huge. Persuasive writing is even better. Writing is huge for me. I was a writing communications major in college, so I really had a strong focus on how to write the right thing. What am I shooting for? What's the goal? What's the call to action? All this stuff plays into putting content out there that's consistent and creating it from within yourself. Don't rely on your marketing team to create your sales content.
So I'm going to come back to content that represents yourself in a second, because that is a whole conversation in itself, versus what I see a lot of people when they start off is it's 5 ways to do blah, blah, blah. And it's just a tutorial that has been copied and pasted essentially from 50 other blogs that are just trying to go after SEO, which is search engine optimization, and all these weird marketing things that marketers have to do. Perhaps we don't have to rely on those things as much. But something you interested me here with, writing. So I know the power, just to prerequisite the question, I know the power of writing. It's something that we and the organization at Greedy Media that puts out the Salesman podcast has put to one side, because there's plenty of people that can do it better than me. And I feel like we can do the video side of things at higher production value, at less corporate and more one-to-one conversational level, which hopefully the audience gets. There's no, we swear on the show. There's no bullshit of wearing suits and ties and shirts. And anyone watching this, I'm obviously wearing one of my own hoodies. And I think that differentiates us in the video world. But for anyone who is thinking about creating content, wants to work on their personal brand, how do they know whether they should be doing video, audio, or written content? Because this is the first step, right?
And yeah, it is the first step. And I know that this is always a point of contention for anyone that's just now starting in sales, and even some people that have been in sales for a long time, but not necessarily adopted the tech side of sales. That's a whole different genre of sales to learn, right? There's that traditional face-to-face stuff. A lot of older guys do that. I do it too. I like to consider myself, new school tech for the old school sales rep, or old school tech for the new school sales rep. But at the same time, there's something to be said for the fact that when you're deciding what kind of content to build, you got to just make sure you're comfortable with it. If you're uncomfortable writing, maybe go take some writing classes and learn how to write, read more. I know recently you've had Morgan J. Ingram on your show. That guy is a hero of mine. I look up to him tremendously. And for a while, I really wanted to do an SDR-based show on YouTube and Facebook and all these things. And then as I'm putting these things together and I'm doing rehearsals and I'm thinking to myself, recording things, I'm like, this is not me. This is Morgan that I'm trying to be. And I brought that up when I went on his show, the SDR Chronicles. I don't want to be Morgan J. Ingram. I need to be James Buckley. So James Buckley is a strong writer, and I know that. So I started out with just articles. And before I knew it, it was a lot of traffic via my articles, people commenting, people saying, this is a great article, James. This is really helpful. I shared this with my team. All those people just became prospects for me. Hey, man, thanks so much for checking out my article. I appreciate the comment. What do you guys use to integrate Salesforce with your inbox, which is the product that I sell, the service that I sell, outside of selling myself?
I'm going to ask you here, and I'm going to be super blunt. And so tell me to piss off if I'm asking too of an in-depth question. But I asked this to Morgan as well, and essentially asked him if he's getting 30, and he's getting more now, but at the time he's getting, say, 30 to 50 views on each of his YouTube videos. That would put some people off, because a lot of the audience, rightly or wrongly, assume that you need to have 20,000 views per video before it's actually useful for anyone. And Morgan was getting loads of comments, loads of traffic, loads of engagement on I'm doing inverted air quotes here, but just 20 to, say, 50 views per video. What kind of traffic? I want to give the audience context that millions of people don't have to know who they are for them to make an impact within their vertical, to make more money, to build their personal brand. That's the context behind the question. But James, how much traffic were you getting, or are you getting, on your articles that then started to make a difference to your day job, if that makes sense? What kind of traffic do we need to aim for where we know we're going to get some kind of result back?
Yeah, so I would say don't aim for traffic. You're never going to be able to control what people view online. That's something you can't control. What you can control is the quality of the work that you do and the quality of value that you deliver to your network from your perspective. Before you can present a product to sell to somebody, you're the value. It doesn't matter what you're selling. Before you have that opportunity, you're the value. So I would say don't shoot for views. There's no magic number. I have done great articles that I thought were just so insightful. And then I give them to the team, and the team is like, this is amazing. I can't wait to see the reaction on LinkedIn. And yeah, you get like 30 views. you get like 10 comments. You get a couple thumbs up, likes. They're great. And they make us feel good. But then you have a template idea that you think is hilarious, and you just do a post, right? There's no article, there's no images, there's no video or audio. It's just like, hey, what do you think of this template? Ha ha ha, laugh of the day, right? 219,000 views later, you're like, how is this viral? I don't understand this. People are sharing it as, I had one guy that hit me back after I posted a template idea that I thought was hilarious. He hit me back 2 hours after I posted it, and he was like, I've been the genuine recipient of this email 3 times today. And that's amazing, right? And at one point you're like, hey, stop stealing my shit, right? You're like, don't post that as if you wrote it, I wrote it. And then it's kind of flattering, right? Like, mockery is the best form of flattery. If somebody's imitating you, then you're doing something right. You're providing them value. So don't shoot for the views or the looks, because you can't control that. But you can control the quality and the value that you deliver every single time you step out onto that front porch to be seen by the world on social.
how much time do you spend writing your articles? Because the argument that we shouldn't be creating content, or at least curating content at the very minimum as a sales professional, is that it's taking up time where we could be selling. So, James, how much time do you spend writing your articles, and then how much time do you spend promoting them as well?
So I won't lie, I spend a lot of time writing my articles, but I've found that as long as I'm writing quality and value, people are engaging with me. And if you're engaging with me, that's my opportunity to sell you something. We spend so much time sitting back waiting for marketing to provide us with leads that we can reach out to. We spend so much time sitting back waiting for a trial start to happen so that we can schedule a demo, hoping that this person might get back to us. But if I've had 6 articles go out and you've read every single one of them and you've commented and reached out to me saying that my content provides great value for your sales team, then when I reach out and say, hey, I've got a couple questions for your workflow, I'd love to connect, the response should be, yeah, I'd love to connect with you. You provide great value. This is amazing. I've had many, many conversations that have started out being centered on my workflows, how I get leads into my pipeline, how I manage my pipeline, and they wind up being about Salesforce and inbox integration because no doubt, eventually somebody's gonna be like, so what do you actually sell, right?
Well, they're going to be looking you up as well. If they read 2 or 3 articles, and I get this all the time with the show, and clearly what I'm doing is slightly different in that I'm doing this full time, just for a start. So I spend kind of 10, 12 hours a day working on all this. So I'm going to scale more so than, unless someone has a huge hit, than an SDR or an account manager or someone else is. So that taken kind of, so with all this with a pinch of salt, I find that people will watch one clip, they'll read one article, they'll watch one video, they'll subscribe to the podcast, they'll get on the email newsletter. And what is magical is this has happened at scale. This has happened with I've done the content, I've put the work in, but then this individual's gone through all these hoops. Because just subscribing to a podcast is a pain in the ass, because you have to pull out your phone, you have to get your app out, you have to search for it, then you have to subscribe, then you have to download the relevant podcast, and you only listen to it typically in the car or at the gym. So it's not as easy as an article to kind of jump into. So when someone goes through all these hoops, when they jump on the email newsletter, when they start then emailing back and forth with me, because the whole point of the email newsletter, which the audience can find over at salesman.email, put that into your browser and you'll jump on there. They then, their mind's blown that then they have a conversation with me. And I spend a couple of hours a day on emails going back and forth with people. And that relationship then, in the fact that I've only really spent 15, 20 minutes engaging with them over email, even though they've consumed 5-6 hours worth of content at this point, that relationship they have with me freaks me out a little bit sometimes, because they know all about what I'm up to, all about the cars I'm after, the business, the podcast, what I'm striving for personally with all of this and the project. And then they ask me all these deep questions, and I'm replying to someone I've only done 2 emails back and forth with, and I barely know who they are. So it scares me sometimes how much people can buy into you from your content. And again, this happens at scale. It's not like I'm ringing up 25 times to cover this kind of period of time to have these conversations with people. And is this something that you find with your content, that you get replies, you get engagement, you get people coming back to you at a much they've already got that know, like, and trust, and so a whole bunch of the relationships already built there?
I do. I get a lot of folks that reach out to me. A lot of sales leaders will reach out to me and talk about their team and how they're structured and be like, what do you think? And it's always great to have those conversations, not because they lead to an opportunity for me to sell something, but because you're providing value to a potential long-term customer there. When they're ready, they're going to buy. I tell people all the time, don't sell your product. Your product will sell itself thanks to your brand, right? So they'll come to you and they'll ask you a couple questions. You have a couple calls with them. You talk to them about their sales team, their sales process, and they talk to you like they know you for years. They've been watching you for 6 weeks now. They've been seeing all your controversial minutes, reading all your articles, sharing them with their team. They know you, but you know nothing about them, like you said. So the best thing for me to do is just be brutally honest. I'm honest to a fault. I don't really care how you feel. Sales is not the place for feelings. It's more of a place for honesty and what's valuable to you. And I feel like if you wear that on your sleeve, people really respect it. So it's great for me to be able to say things like, really glad you like my content. If I'm being honest here, I have to know a little bit more about your background and your process and where you guys came from. I know you've been watching me for a while, but it's tough for me because I have 5,782 followers, right? I don't know which one of those, that big number you are. And that's tough for people to hear, right? Because they feel like they're not valued in that moment. But if they're calling you and they're wanting your help, then they're going to understand the fact that you're going to need more information to be able to provide them with good content. Sometimes I'm quick to be like, this is interesting. I have a couple people I can talk to about this. Let me schedule a task to get back to you in a week. And I'll talk to some other pros that we have here in the office that, my director of sales, my CEO, my COO, and ask them and then get back to my person that called back to me. You don't have to have all the answers, but you have to have all the value.
Cool. I want to dive into the practical. I'm going to pick your brains on the writing side of things here in a second. And we're going to get from a practitioner, from someone, a dude literally in a sales role who's doing this real time in front of us. I'm going to get as much of your process, of the methodology, of the steps to creating these articles from you in a second. But one thing that I just want to ponder on for a second before we get practical, James, and that is, how much of a differentiator when you're looking for a new sales role is it to have a personal brand? Like if you were to move from your company to even a competitor, how much of the conversation at that first interview do you think could be about your personal brand and the customers you can and the attention you can bring with you?
So if I'm answering this question as honestly as possible, I can say that I don't have all the answers to it. What I can say though is that if I were to go to another company now and interview, boosting my personal brand and how it helped Cirrus Insight to become what it is today in the last 2 or 3 years, that would probably be my primary focus during that interview. I built this brand from the ground up. It represents me and what I believe and my sales practice, so to speak. I also feel confident in myself now that if something were to happen with Cirrus Insight, and believe me when I tell you that loyalty is huge for me, I'll ride this wave till it hits the shore. But if something did happen, I would probably go my own route and become a consultant, a business consultant, a sales consultant, to train teams on how to be a solid SDR. In addition to that, I've never been offered so many jobs in my life because of my personal brand.
What does that consist of? Just to dive into this, because I get headhunted regularly to come into consulting companies. People think it blows my mind because the whole premise of this podcast is that I'm a B salesperson. I would hit target, but I wouldn't crush it. I would never at the top of the leaderboard. And so the premise of the show is that I'm trying to learn. I'm sucking information from people like yourself, James, as we go along through it. But I've been headhunted 6 times, 5 legit conversations I've had this year so far to get me into kind of big research firms and for them to start picking my audience's brains essentially and to continue doing the show, but to pull in data because I've probably got the biggest audience of salespeople, like B2B specific salespeople on the planet at this moment in time. There's nothing to do with me. It's kind of the guests that come on the show that have built this. But I get asked all the time for this, and the answer is always no. Kind of a hedge, kind of all in on the show and the growth, because I think that's where it's going to win over the long term, and that's where the company will be taken over by, hopefully, be bought by someone. The LinkedIn's, the Salesforces. They'll want this as part of the kind of product mix and branding mix. So that's my long term goal with all of this. So I tell them this, and they still keep chasing me. So for someone like yourself, I'm kind of a weird. I'm involved in the sales space, but this is more marketing. So it's kind of a weird scenario. So I don't think the audience will be able to, or maybe the audience won't be able to buy into that from themselves and their own perspective. But for you, tell us about these opportunities that are getting thrown your way, the job offers and everything else that comes on the back of a personal brand, because you are literally where if someone works their ass off right now, they could be in a similar position to you, right? In 3 years' time and have these opportunities as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, so it's funny, right? Like even I've done 37 shows for Cirrus Insight around the world. So if you don't know, Cirrus Insight is the #1 tool for Salesforce and inbox integration. We have a huge user base, #1 app on the market, most highly reviewed, solid app. If you're using Salesforce, you've never tried Cirrus Insight, that's something that you should definitely do. Because of that platform and because Salesforce is the huge monster that it is, and there's so many tech startups and applications out there that are salespeople just like me that sell software or sell cloud-based anything, just sell something in the tech realm. There's so many out there. So when I go to these shows and I shake hands with CEOs and we talk and I make funny jokes, that's part of my brand. I'm the humorous guy. I'm going to say some funny shit to you. If you met me in person, you'll remember me because I made you laugh in 30 seconds. That part of it is like, they immediately are like into me, right? They talk to me, they stand close to me. I can feel that, hey, this is really interesting. You did a great job. I hear that all the time. A lot of CEOs will slap me their card when they shake my hand and be like, let me know if you ever need a job. My CEO or COO has had to step in a couple times and say, hey, but this type of value, this is what makes you know that you've got something that you can sell, and that's you. Yeah, the transition from job to entrepreneur almost has to come as a result of a sales rep developing their personal brand. Because when you build something that you own, like yourself, right? I own me. I'm responsible for everything I do. I hold myself accountable. And when you can do that, and you bring that value to the conversations that you have, to the demos that you do, to the presentations that you make in front of board members, et cetera, this is where you find that gold nugget that says, I can sell myself. And no matter the product, right? At the end of the day, all I need to do is use myself to get the opportunity to do a great job selling a product. Yeah, I sell Salesforce and inbox integration, but I think I sell that as an afterthought to selling myself, because it takes what I have inside me, the content I create and the thoughts that I have, which are sometimes ridiculous, right? It takes that for me to get the conversation started. Once the conversation is started, I can control where I want that conversation to go. And if it doesn't go my way, that's okay.
And just to double down on this for a second, I'm hesitant to say his name because I need to check with him because I didn't know this. But and he's been on the show 3 times now, and he's blown me away every time he's come on the show. One of the world's leading sales experts, he has 3 books out, and I think he's just about to release a new book. And people who are into this people who read sales books probably know who I'm talking about right now. I didn't know this, but his personal brand, the books, the consulting he does, is his side hustle. He has a full-time job as a kind of internal sales consultant within this huge organization, and that's his job. The books and you'll know exactly who it is. We talk about it after we stop recording here, perhaps, because as I said, I don't know. If I didn't know about it, maybe it's somewhat hush hush that this is a side hustle. But I thought this is what he'd been doing for the past 30 years, and he's really good at it. He's a genius. He's a good guy. He's helped me out a ton of times with different bits of content ideas that I've had and different marketing strategies, and even the name of the show and some of the branding elements and trying to be more controversial in the way we do things. He's helped me out with tons of stuff. He spent plenty of time with me, both on the show and off the show. And I did not realize, as I said, this was a side hustle for him. So this is an interesting one for the audience. You pulled on some of my heartstrings there a little bit, James, in that when I worked in sales, I knew that I wanted to run my own business. I knew that I wanted to do something else, even alongside the sales role, if not to replace it. And that turned into this podcast. And the podcast could have been about anything. It just happened to be about sales because we covered it on the show before. At the time, there was loads of shit sales content out there. There was nothing I resonated with. So I did the cliche entrepreneurial strategy of scratching my own itch and creating content I wanted to consume. So with that all aside for a second, because hopefully there's a whole bunch of the audience that go and there's sparks going off in their mind at the moment saying, hey, I want to do something alongside what I'm doing. I like working in sales. There's a consultant element to this. There's books. There's all kinds of things that come off the back of a personal brand. So I want to leave that with them just to smolder, and we'll perhaps do another show in the future to dive into that further. But going back to the writing, so I like to leave the audience with something real practical so that they can implement it, listen to the show, they get to the office, one of their calls is cancelled, they've got an hour, they want to practice, they want to create their first bit of content, they want to jump in feet first. What is the structure that you use to create an article, if there is one? Is there a start, middle, finish? Do you use the hero's journey? Do you not do any of that and you just plot everything down and then try and rewrite it and rework it to make sense? When you sit down, James, to write an article, what do you do so just blatantly we can copy it and try and put our own spin on it?
Copy it all you like. I think it comes from a single thought that I have something that somebody says, and I think, hey, that's a LinkedIn article. And then what I'll do is I'll use my iPhone and just use Siri, and I'll say, hey, remind me to write whatever article tomorrow at 9 a.m. And then when I get that reminder, I jump over to LinkedIn, Google a couple of images, pull up some Shutterstock, whatever I need to do to get some good, motivation for the article and what I'm thinking. From there, I simply start the article off with the first two paragraphs. One of them is presenting the problem. The first one is presenting the problem or the thought behind the article. And then the next one is like bullet points of ideas that support my thought up top. From there, I typically will have a call to action about what somebody else is thinking. So I like ending my articles with, what are your thoughts on this? I love to hear from my network. A lot of my network people will jump back in and say, James, here's what I think. It doesn't always agree with me, and you don't have to. That's fine. That's the beauty of being in sales. There's lots of ways to do it. There's no silver bullet. Some people really detest cold calling, while other people love it. And they say, I've never made so much money in my life cold calling. And then you have another guy on the other end of that spectrum that's just as successful, but he never does cold calls. He schedules every call that he does, and he uses email to do it. He just happens to be a great writer. So when we think about writing and when we think about what we want to write, I think the best course of action is to say, where's the value? Is it in the bullet points? Is it in the initial thought? Is it in the feedback that I'm going to get from this thought? And as detailed as I can be, while not giving away a solution that you think is the only solution out there, right? If we're open-minded in all of our writing, we can learn together. We're using our social media networks. We can learn together as a sales industry, and we can all share these ideas that work for us. And I get it, right? Especially if you're selling sales tools or sales products to salespeople, that can be muddy water because you don't want everyone to know your magic trick, right? But I give them away freely. I think they're worthy of people using them. I think they're effective because they're universal. And I have no problem talking to a group of salespeople and saying, hey, instead of writing a novel to somebody the first time you ever reach out to them, maybe just present what you do and ask if it's on their radar. It's 2 sentences. You're going to get more out of that because the attention span of the average reader of an email is, I think, about 30 seconds. If you've not captured them in 30 seconds, you're not going to. So when you write a novel to me, I'm immediately turned off. I have no interest in reading that. And I don't expect anyone that I'm sending emails to read a novel that I wrote them. However, I do write books. And those books are usually centered on sales. I wrote Tip of the Spear as a result of writing lots of articles. And I thought to myself, like, hey, all these articles kind of have a major theme, right? What if I compile that into this one book about the sales role and the SDR role? And I thought that was really useful because as a newcomer to the SDR role about 3 years ago, and keep in mind, I sell a Salesforce product, but I did not know what Salesforce was 3 years ago. I had no idea. I had no clue. The only thing that I knew was that I could talk to people until the cows come home. That's it. And I thought that's great, right? I could do that. So I took all those articles and I basically compiled them into Tip of the Spear, Blood, Sweat, and Sales. And you can really see the flow in that because there is an initial thought, there are supporting bullet points, and then there's a call to action, or there's a reassertion of my point. Here's why this is true. If you disagree with me, that's fine. I'd love to hear your comment. I never pander to the negativity that comes from the articles, which is a totally separate conversation, right? We could probably talk about that for hours. But there's so much negative out there. You might write an article that you feel is amazing. You're like, this is going to be so useful for every salesperson that reads it. I can't wait to hear the feedback. Everyone's going to love me. Dude, no one will ever just love you, right? There's always going to be that person that is going to tear you down. And it's on you as a sales rep to say, I'm not going to pay that any mind. I don't want to breathe life into that negativity, right? I'm more interested in the people that are like, this was really helpful for me. I just started in sales. I'd love to set up a call and learn more from you. Those are the people I want to focus on. Be open-minded, be kind to each other. We can all learn from each other. If you're closed enough minded that you don't feel like you can gain anything from someone else, you're probably not going to like me very much.
2 things here, James, or maybe even 3. But these are probably whole conversations in themselves. So we'll run quickly through them before we wrap up. First one, you mentioned giving secrets away. This is, to me, a no-brainer. And I think anyone who has any long-term experience in sales or business gets this, in that there are no secrets, right? Anything that works right now is not going to work in 6 months. Anything that worked a year ago kind of doesn't work so well anymore. Gary Vaynerchuk says the best of marketers ruin everything. and then salespeople come back after the fact. So marketers ruined email by spamming everyone with automated emails. Then salespeople typically come on the back of marketers' coattails and then ruin it even further when it's already a platform that's been screwed around with. The phone is the same. It'll be text. It'll be Facebook, Instagram messages. It'll be whatever next. We're always on the back foot to marketing with a lot of this stuff. So all the secrets, they're already exposed. They're already out there. So I feel that we should just be open and honest about them. And if you can tie yourself as someone in the sales industry to having that breakthrough email template or whatever it is, you only need to be right that one time, and that can affect the whole of your career moving forward. So that was just something that I wanted to say. And I see this when people ask me, kind of going off topic here, but people who want to start companies, they'll ask me questions. And my response is always, well, tell me more about it. And then I've been asked to sign non-disclosure agreements. I've been asked to kind of get on the phone and not talk about it over email because people think their ideas are special when typically they're not. Millions of people have had the idea of Facebook, which is originally kind of a closed network where you get to share photos and chat up girls and lads and kind of like them. What was the poke button? That was the whole premise of Facebook when I was at uni, just to poke random people that you've not met yet and try and get some engagement with them.
I still get poked. Yeah, people still poke me left and right. I try to poke them back, and then they just poke me back. I still don't understand what that's for, but apparently people like it. So,
yeah. But you may be inadvertently flirting with a load of people there, James. So we'll leave that one for a second. So there's the secrets. I just wanted to double down on that. If you've got something that's working really well, share it because that karma paid forward is more important than the few deals that it might close in the meantime. The other thing was I was interested, and again, to be practical about this, it seems like you're writing articles not sat on a high horse of this is how you do things, but it seems like the articles as you're describing them there and the few that I've read, it's more engineered to create a discussion. So you're asking questions, giving value and bullet points, but they're not being, I'm the expert, this is how you do things, this is my thoughts. You're essentially leaving it more open-ended. Is that something that you're consciously and purposefully doing?
I am. I've never claimed to be an expert in anything. A lot of my peers, especially here at Cirrus, will come to me and say, "Well, I thought I talked to you because you're the expert." And I'm like, "Look, I'm just me, right?" But I feel like I can learn something from everybody that's in my network. There's someone out there that has had this experience or that experience and can offer me some feedback in what worked for them. And maybe it's not the way I would go, but at least I've got that perspective now. And maybe it's a perspective I didn't have before. At any rate, no matter what we're discussing, that's valuable to me. If I'm looking at it through your eyes, then I'm looking at it through your title's eyes, your experience eyes, all of the things that you've gone through with whatever that discussion might be in my article. So yeah, I don't assert myself as a professional or a expert in any field at all, but I do assert the fact that I have these thoughts. And the network of leaders that I have out there and the people that do sales every day, just like me, those people can provide feedback that may lead me in a direction to be more valuable to a customer that I'm working with. That in itself is more valuable than any secret template that somebody might offer me, which is, I think those are valuable too. I like getting template ideas because I say, well, what about this? And then they go, oh, I didn't think of that. A lot of times people fall into this terrible trap of feeling like they have to answer all the questions. I have to be the person with all the answers. Well, if you're doing free trials or trying to set up a demo, why would that person do that? If you've given them everything that you could possibly, there has to be an element of mystery there so that they go, oh yeah, I do want to see it, in fact, or yeah, I'd love to try it, right? But we fall into that trap and we say, I have all the answers. I'm an expert. You want to talk to me. I know everything, right? And what that customer hears is bullshit, 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 right? So I do kind of find value in leaving open-ended questions. I'll post things online that talk about my past experience and my past jobs. Just recently, I had a good one where I said that I lost a lot of jobs before I realized that it was me that was the problem. I had to change if I wanted to find success. And I think that one went crazy, couple hours. It had like 1,000 views on it and a few comments. But it's not about the comments or the likes or the views or anything. It's just about being really honest with your network so that when they're looking for somebody to give them feedback, they know they can count on you to be upfront with them, be honest with them. Like you said at the beginning of this call, don't worry about hurting my feelings, right? If you're trying to improve, that's the mentality you have to have in all the content that you put out there. I do have some assertions that I make when I talk about controversial things in the controversial minute, like we need to be able to confront our salespeople and hold them accountable. I don't think that that's something any sales leader would disagree with. If you have a non-confrontational approach and you wonder why your team is not hitting their goals, it's because you're not holding them accountable for those goals. You need to have a confrontational approach to a degree. I'm not saying let's all say, let's take it outside. That's crazy. Let's not stalk, cubicle to cubicle with carbine gas-powered weapons. But let's talk about the problem like it's a real problem. If you say, hey man, I really want to talk about this call because I saw that you only made one call to this person after they installed a free trial. Instead, you need to be like, hey man, it's time to pick up your game. I don't want to see this again. I don't want to have this conversation again. We've had it 3 times, and this is the last time we're going to have it. And you should be able to hold everyone accountable and assert yourself that way as a sales leader. And I don't think anyone would disagree with that. So you can make assertions in some content, but when you're writing, you never want to be the I know everything, top 5 ways to, you have no idea what the top 5 ways are. Someone else has 5 other different ways to do it.
And you're also, with the writing, which is different to a conversation, you're putting yourself on the record, right? You're putting yourself out there. Even if you delete that article, it's still there. It's going to come and bite you in the ass in the future. So if you're somewhat humble about the way you're writing, and you can be assertive, you can be controversial, you can have your own thoughts and opinions. But if you're somewhat humble about the fact that things might change, and that's the undertone of the conversation, that you're happy to grow and develop, then you're not leaving yourself so open to being shown to be an idiot in the future. And just one thing to wrap up here, James. I don't know if you've read, I'll just ask you, have you read any of Dory Clark's books?
I've not, actually.
Okay, so Dory Clark, I interviewed her yesterday. She's a personal branding expert, marketing expert, works with other big companies, and she has a 3-step kind of structure to personal branding. And I feel like you fell into this, whether it was designed that way, whether it wasn't designed that way. But step 1 is content, step 2 is social proof, and step 3 is network. And what you're describing in the past kind of 35, 40 minutes we've been on the call here, James, is each one of them of you're creating content, you're passing that out to a specific network, and you're building them, you're reverse engineering them to comment on the content, which grows the network organically in itself through the LinkedIn platform. And then that, again, inadvertently builds the social proof into the conversation. Is that would you add anything to those 3 as a summary for this episode, I guess, of what the audience should be doing? We've covered the writing element of it, but as an overview of they should be creating content that builds a network, which then builds in social proof. Is there any other steps you'd add to that?
The last step is execution. You have to be able to execute on all of those things. It doesn't do you any good to put great content out there about providing good customer service and then provide bad customer service. So you have to be able to execute on everything that you're putting out there. If you're going to step out on a limb and say you're an expert in Salesforce, well, no one from Salesforce better ever be able to stump you when they ask you a question about Salesforce, right? So that's the 4th step, I think, is being true to what the content is that you're putting out there. Because I've never asserted myself as an expert in any field, people call me and say, what do you know about this? And I say, well, I've got a little value there. I could probably throw something at you. And it's as a result of that, we have a great conversation. We start a relationship. We grab a beer. They become a customer 3 months later. That's the long term, but it does work. After a while, you get enough of those, and it's like knocking down dominoes, right? Who can I sell to today? This guy? Maybe that guy? We've been talking for 3 months. Let's see if we can get a call scheduled. It seems to me like we all want to think, hey, 1 call, 1 email should equal 1 sale, but that's not true. What it does equal is a valuable person added to your pipeline. But if you can't execute on all that content that led them to get into your pipeline, then you're just putting content out there that's untrue. And that takes away from the trust, which is where solid relationships are found. My book starts off, the first thing it says is humility is the solid foundation through which all other virtues are built. That was Confucius that said that. But you got to stay humble. You got to recognize the fact that you don't know everything.
Love it. James, let's wrap things up. I've got one question. I'm sure you know this because I've asked it in every episode so far. And that is, if you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, what's the one piece of advice you'd give him to help him become better at selling?
Don't be afraid to be yourself. Don't be afraid to step out there and be genuine. Sincerity has helped me so much along the way. I tell everyone my story. I shouldn't be here. I should be dead or in jail. So for me, be yourself, be honest with who you are out there in public, and you'll get good responses.
Love it. I love it. And that was one of, and I think this has changed in the past few years, probably because of social media. But when I first started the show, that was one of the things I really tried to drill into the audience of no one wants to deal with some dude in a shirt, tie, who's super corporate down the line, has no personality, or some woman in a power suit, the same kind of frame of mind. They don't want this corporate drone. We want to deal with individuals, right? And I think this is an incredible time for salespeople. I love to project things forward 5 years and think about this of where we'll be in that period when everyone is on Instagram, when everyone's posting content, when 90% of salespeople have some kind of drone following them around all day, recording Gary Vaynerchuk or Casey Neistat style videos, which allow them to put out more content, and clearly the content overload becomes an issue, and that's a separate conversation. But I can't wait for that moment, because the charlatans, the bullshit artists will be found out, because you can't do that congruently for long enough. The lies get on top of people, and it will relieve the sales industry, I believe, of the used car salesperson kind of persona that we all believe in, the stereotype. I think that will just disappear over time as things become more open and honest. And with that, James, you kind of mentioned the book. Give us a plug, give us pictures on the book, tell us where we can find it, and tell us where we can find out more about you as well.
So Tip of the Spear was released. It's Tip of the Spear, Blood, Sweat, and Sales, released about a month ago, 2 months ago. I've had so many people download it, leave great comments about it. It's available on Amazon. You can reach out to me directly. I'm happy to send you a copy or send you the link to install it. But it's basically a handbook for the modern day SDR, specifically the SaaS industry, but I feel like a lot of what I talk about applies across the board. I always give out, every podcast I do, this is probably weird. You have 500,000 people that listen to this thing, so this is going to come across really weird, but I give my number to anyone that wants to call me. I love talking to new people and meeting folks. My direct line is 949-229-2143, or you can shoot me an email, jbuckley@cirrusinsight.com. And if you're a Salesforce user, what are you waiting for, man? I'll pay you for your time. We do $100 and $50 gift cards to do a demo of Cirrus Insight after you install the free trial. You have nothing to lose. I really look forward to hearing from as many people as possible, because I love learning from new sales reps, new sales leaders. Let's connect. That's my whole life. Let's connect.
Love it. And with that, Sales Nation, I implore you to, if you're working on your personal brand, fire over 1-line email, 2-line email to James. Suck the value out of him the best you can, because at some point he's not going to have the time and the opportunity and the energy. Eventually, if you carry on the trajectory that you're on, mate, it's going to become more difficult to reply to all these emails and these phone calls. So, Sales Nation, get in there whilst you can. And with that, mate, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for being so open and honest about all this. It means a lot from a real sales practitioner, someone who's in the trenches going through all this, and kind of you're sharing essentially where you are from 3 years ago to where you are now, and clearly we'll have you on in the future as well, and we'll see the progression there. So I appreciate that, and I want to thank you for joining us on the Salesman Podcast.
It's been a real pleasure. I've really enjoyed this. I look forward to coming back on and doing more of these. So shout out to everybody that has helped me be successful along the way. I appreciate everything.